Hi there, and welcome everybody to the Sunday edition of the This Is Ibrox podcast. Before we start, just a quick word from our sponsors today. We are brought to you in association with our friends over at Zenith Coins, who are giving every Rangers fan the opportunity to own their own memorable coin collection. Zenith have created a set of 5 wonderfully crafted coins, each celebrating huge milestones in the club's 150-year history. A coin for the founding fathers, Ibrox Stadium, the European Cup winner Cup squad of the Barcelona Bears in 1972, 9 in a row, the 55th league title championship win under Steven Gerrard, and you can get them from their website at www.zenithcoins.com. I know I got a bit of a bollocking off JB last time for mentioning the Christmas word. Maybe I don't know if it's a bit closer to that now because that's all everybody's seen. But yeah, great gift for Christmas. But on today's show, I'm joined by JB. How are you doing today, JB?
Yeah, Rangers aside, doing well, mate, as discussed. So yeah, I'm actually looking forward to chatting about Rangers. So we'll try and put as much positivity in as we can, as difficult as it will be. But no, yeah, good to be back on.
Yeah, and Andy, how are you getting on today as well?
I'm absolutely fine, Kyle. Glad to be back. I've had a wee bit of time off from the podcast for various reasons. Glad to be back. Not so happy about the state Rangers are in at the moment, or that we need to wait 5 weeks to see them again. Maybe that's a blessing. I'm quite sure we'll go on to that. But on the whole, I'm absolutely fine, pal.
Yeah, that's great news. Look, I can already see the comments going off, but we'll get to the topic of discussion at some point. And today's pod, though, we got loads to discuss. We got Gio's interview in Sky, which has been viewed, I think, well over sort of 55,000 times on Twitter, which is interesting. We're going to have a wee discussion in the season so far, thoughts in particular about the 2-week break that the players have got at the moment. That's something that's certainly irking myself. And predominantly, I'd be really keen to get you guys that are watching your thoughts on Ross Wilson. And I said we'll leave that discussion for towards the end of the podcast. I think we've got plenty to discuss. But basically, what I'd like to know is, do you think Ross Wilson's been a success? Would you keep him at Rangers? Would you let him go, or would you and maybe replace him with a new director of football, or would you just scrap the director of football role entirely? Let us know in the comments, guys. Look, I like to start every show with a wee sort of on this day, and I always forget to give this account a wee shout out, but it's WTP at 72 RFC on Twitter. Thank you for doing these. But this one certainly got us discuss a lot of discussion with us before we came on tonight, and it's in 2004. Summer sidings, Nacho Novo and Dado Purcell scored in a 2-0 victory against Celtic. This was obviously the famous helicopter Sunday year. I'll come to you first on this, Andy. This was the game that Dado Purcell had his infamous headgear on it. What's your memories of that game?
It was a great game if I remember correctly. You might need to forgive me. I think if I'm right in saying that we beat them in the League Cup at Ibrox in an evening game, and we also beat them 2-0 in the game you're talking about. Novo and Purcell scored. I think Novo got the first penalty kick, Purcell got the second, a header from a free kick cross. Both smashing goals. Dado done what Dado used to do. Rose like Jesus and banged one by the goalkeeper. Done it thousands of times for us. Fantastic. If I remember correctly, Peter Lovenkrands didn't cover himself in glory. Kind of feigning a headbutt from Alan Thompson, although the intent may well have been there, and Chris Sutton gets sent off as well. It was a fiery game. I can't remember if it was before or after the League Cup game. Was that the second time we beat them in the space? I think it was 9 days or 10 days or something like that. Mm-hmm. But I remember it being an important game because if I'm right, we get beat at Celtic Park in the first game of the season. And that was back then when the seasons were more itchy-peachy than they are now. Teams tend to be a wee bit more consistent, I believe, now. Or the league winner seems to be a bit more consistent now. So it was back then when that could happen. But it was a good game, if I remember right. And who did he like seeing Nacho Novo and Dado Purcell score against Celtic? Purcell certainly loved Rangers. And you would argue, or you could argue, certainly did Nacho Novo love Rangers more than he hated Celtic? I don't know. So it was two smashing goals and by two great players for us. So it's a good memory to have.
Yeah, it was. It was a fantastic game, and as I said, that Dado Purcell headgear's become sort of infamous with him now. JB, have you got any memories from that day that you'd like to share? And just one wee point, I noticed in that tweet as well that it said that in that season, Novo scored 25 goals in 48 games, and Purcell scored 21 goals in 46 games. Do you think that's something that's missing from the current Rangers squad? Is players other than strikers being able to score goals at the moment?
Yeah, I think as Andy touched on there, I think it was definitely a fiery game, first of all, referring back to that. Always good to get a decent win over them as well. If I remember rightly, they were lucky to even finish with 2 men getting sent off, that we were discussing off air there. The boy Kamara, I think they had at the time, stamped with Gregory Vignal from memory. And yeah, it was definitely a fiery one. It was, I remember the game in the League Cup game as well. The Darvel lads, he not scored late on as well. But yeah, no, good memories. I think whenever you see the goals flying in against them, it always brings back the memories. You tend to forget the ones we can see, but certainly the ones we score always bring a smile. But yeah, no, so that was that, jumping back. And then in terms of goal scorers, I think that's one that we've all touched on quite a lot, haven't we, throughout the season. And one of the things that we've been crying out for is goals within the team. You can argue whether it's the setup or the style of play or whatever it is, but the fact is we just haven't got enough players who enjoy scoring goals. Novo loves scoring goals. You've seen it in his face. He'd run himself into the ground. Perso, exact same, loves scoring goals. The clubs he was at before, when he come to us, they were goal scorers. So it's something that we've really lacked throughout the team. I mean, if you think of Novo's numbers there, how many times would he have been doing that coming in from the wing as well? I know we took a few penalties that season, but that season we probably had 3 or 4, if not 5 different penalty takers. So it's not as if he was nailed on, but yeah, definitely more goal scorers needed within the team. So whether we get that in January or whether we get a fully fit Morelos back up to challenge Joe Black with Roof, I'm sure we'll get to that later in the show. Get goals needed within this Rangers team.
Yeah, no, that's it exactly, GB. It was great memories from a great game and a good season, which was ultimately what we hoped for this year, but is yet to appear. Look, let's get straight into it. I'll come to you first on this one, Andy. Obviously, it'd be remiss of us not to talk about the interview that went out on Friday, sort of midday. I think Sky released it on their sort of official channels and stuff like that. It was an interview with, I think it was Mark Benstead that was interviewing Gio, and it was signifying that he had been a year in charge of Rangers. Gio talked about his history with the beautiful club. Overall, Andy, what did you think of the interview?
2 things I thought off the bat, Kyle. One, he's going nowhere. If they're releasing that type of interview, he's not going anywhere. I think a lot of us, certainly not all of us, but a lot of us did think that if it was going to happen, it would have happened the first day of the World Cup break because it had to. So I think releasing this interview says that's not going to happen. Secondly, I think it was a struggle to put a spin on it. It's what it was. We'll go through the topics in more detail, I'm quite sure, but on the whole, the interview was a struggle, I thought, to try and put a spin on it. The answers were predictable, the only answers that he could give. I'm quite happy that he didn't blame the fact that a lot of the players still playing in the first 11 weren't his signings. He could have quite easily put the blame at the door of that, or he could have blamed injuries a bit more. He didn't do that. I don't believe you should do that as a Rangers manager or a Rangers fan, albeit. So that was quite good to see. But on the whole, I thought it was a kind of struggle. They did try, I thought, to kind of get him to say that we weren't over losing the Europa League final. A lot of folk do believe that is still the case, that there's still a bit of a hangover going on from that. I'm not so sure. I think there's other reasons. I don't think it is that. But on the whole, I thought it was a bit of a struggle of an interview to try and put a positive spin on a very, very hard time for the club, top to bottom at the moment. As I say, I thought he'd done well, and he could have blamed a hell of a lot of more things on injuries and not his signings, etc., etc. He didn't do that. I'm glad to see it. But on the whole, I thought it was a bit of a struggle. And
yeah, JB, I'd be really keen just to get your overall thoughts on the interview as well. And what do you think? Do you think it was just a bit of a PR exercise? And and that was the sort of board unofficially telling us that Gio's here for at least until the summer, maybe.
Yeah, I think so. I think, as Andy touched on there, I'm not sure when the interview was done in terms of timing. I'm not sure whether the interview was actually done straight after the run of games. I tried to listen back to it today in patches. Listened to it originally at the time, but I think I was only half listening to it because I thought I was still in the bad space of I don't want to hear anything. But no, just very uninspiring. I think I've just got to get used to the fact that that's his character. I think for me, I want someone that's going to come out and make us feel better, and someone who's going to come out and say, right, I'm up for this fight, and I've got your back. Where the results haven't been good enough, the performances haven't been good enough. Gerrard, for all his faults, you kind of knew how he felt in all situations. Whereas I think we could be winning 5-0 or getting beat 5-0, and he's just that same level consistently, which I don't find as a Rangers fan, I don't find him relatable. Now, he's not there to be relatable to people like me. He's there to win football matches. But when he's doing neither, I think it definitely puts him under pressure for me. I haven't heard anybody that said, you know what, now that I've heard his interview, I feel a bit more confident going into the post-World Cup. If anything, I feel a wee bit more uninspired than I did pre the interview. And I think we all just know he's one draw or defeat away from carnage again, which is disappointing because we all want him to do well. We all want him to turn it around. But it's going to be an interesting few weeks once we get back. I mean, who knows if we go on a wee bit of a winning run, including the Old Firm just after Christmas, then needless to say, we'll all back him, we'll all get behind him. But as it sits at the moment, I'm not sitting here confident that'll be the case, but we'll wait and see.
Yeah, there's a few comments in there. I think we're a lot of people struggled to either watch it the first time round, but I think we've all had to endure it again. But I think you've hit the nail on the head there, GB. It's really difficult to determine whether that's just him or it's just a very Dutch way of being, like very calm, relaxed, like shrug the shoulders a bit. But you're right, as supporters, we demand a bit of fire in the belly at time, a bit of fight, and it's just not there. Look, so getting into the sort of specifics about it, Andy, I'll come to you on this one. Gio talked about the break and how the team just had to keep going. I don't know if it was a kind of, I'm not used as an excuse, but I'm going to mention it anyway type thing, talking about that there was only 2-3 clubs that wanted the game, the breaks split in his first sort of 6 months in charge. And against Celtic, that he acknowledged the manner of defeat. Does that make it even more frustrating that it happened again the second time against Celtic?
Of course. If you're acknowledging how hard they felt that night, I think it was early February last year, 7:45 kickoff. If you're acknowledging how bad you felt losing in that manner, to go out and do it, 8 months later, 7 months later, it's unforgivable. As is so many other things that's happened under Gio, unfortunately. The break, I'm not so worried about his comments of a manager. I think his comments really were to appease us. He knows the Rangers Football Club know that the fans were peed off, for want of a better expression, about the break coming like that, because we didn't want it. Only a few clubs did want it. That is true. So him saying that is just kind of trying to get him into us, but that's fine. You expect that. His job is to keep the team going through a break like that and get them back to fire as soon as we can. Every other team managed to do it and never really moaned about it. We can't use that as an excuse, and he shouldn't be using that as an excuse. But in answer to your question, does it make you more furious? Yes, of course it does. To go down 3-0 under the lights at Celtic Park like that, in that manner, to do it again not a few months later, is unforgivable. Now, you can wax lyrical about the pace Celtic play at and the consistency they've got and the forward play they're doing, all the rest of it. Our job's to stop that. His job's to stop that, sorry. And he's failed to do it on now 2 occasions to the extent of hammerings. And they were hammerings, and that's unforgivable.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. You can't disagree with anything you've said there. JB, I'll come to you in the next point on it I found quite interesting was that he was talking about, the players after the defeat in the Europa League final, I've heard it mentioned a couple of times, but is that something maybe as a support that we need to be, I don't know, a bit more acknowledging of the toll that would have taken on the players, and maybe as a team we just haven't dealt with losing that final well, or is it just another excuse?
No, not for me. I think there's a number of things that are staring us in the face that just don't seem to be working well at the moment. Fitness has got nothing to do with the appointment of 55. The way 55. That's me going back even further. It's got nothing to do with the back of Seville. I think to get back. I think there's something drastic to turn around. It's going to take a real good run of games, as I touched on earlier, to try that feel-good space. I think as a support, and the players as well, have been through the journey of the highs of 55 and then the lows of Seville, and then the lows of the Old Firm beatings, the highs of the Champions League. We can't seem to get that just steady high bar. It's we're either up here or we're down there. We just need that bit of consistency now. Even European games, I don't think anyone was expecting us to go in there and blitz it and with loads of points. But I think we were all confident we could maybe pick up 3, 4, 5 points when we see the group. When the group came out initially, that we all thought we could do something. But if you don't perform, then you've got to get what you deserve. And as we all know, without dwelling on it too much, it was an embarrassment from start to finish once we got in the groups. And let's not forget, we were even lucky to make the groups because we got a right doing away at USG as well. So credit to the play turning that round. But it's we're going to need a bit of positivity. So once hopefully we can come back and get off to a good start against Hibs, build on that with the Aberdeen game, and then obviously going into the big one in January. But it's going to be an interesting few weeks, as I said a few times.
Yeah, that's it exactly. That actually brings me on to my next point quite nicely, Andy, which I'll come to you on. And that is the other next sort of takeaway point from that interview was he talked about the club and the management not foreseeing the difficulties in the Champions League, and he seemed to largely lay this at the amount of injuries that we've had. Do you see this as a valid excuse for some of the poor results in the Champions League?
It's perhaps an excuse for poor results. It's not an excuse for some of the results. You should not be losing 7 goals at home to any team. His job is to set a team up to compete in that game, first and foremost. And if that wasn't going to work, not to be absolutely hammered. There's no justification for being the worst ever team in the Champions League. You can't swing it with injuries. You can't swing it with I wasn't backed in the summer. You can't swing it with any other reason other than complete and total failure. It's as simple as that. 6 games, 6 hammerings, only 2 goals scored. The manner of some of the hammerings was bad. Liverpool, incidentally, I thought from what I've seen of it, I've never seen the whole game. The first half was all right to an extent, but to crumble like that in the second half, that's unforgivable. But on the whole, to come out of the Champions League as the worst ever performing team can't be spun. You can't spin that in any way, shape, or form other than complete and total utter failure. Injuries aside. Now, Tom Lawrence, etc., Hagi, Roof may have made a difference. Would it have changed the overall result? Nah, it wouldn't have, not at all. So you can't use that solely. What you can use it for is, as I said, about the defeats itself, not the manner, but the defeats. When it comes to injuries in the league, there is certain times I do believe that Tom Lawrence or Hagi or Roof being fit or Golson being fit may have stopped a couple of the draws we had, or losing in Perth or drawing in Paisley last week. It may well have stopped that. But again, as Rangers manager or Rangers fan, you can't use injuries because you don't care about the other team's injuries. You go out and you defeat what's in front of you, or you do your best to defeat what's in front of you. You cannot use injuries. Ross Wilson, as we'll get to shortly, I believe, and Van Bronckhorst, their job every window is to strengthen that squad, not the team, the squad, into a league-winning squad. And that's not happened this year. So we'll get to Ross Wilson, I'm sure, in the future. But I don't think you can use injuries as an excuse for a Champions League, Craig. Kyle, sorry, no.
That's all right. I've been called far worse than that in my time, Andy. But yeah, I agree with you largely there. There's a comment here from Bluno70 saying that he should have been sacked for that Liverpool debacle. He's even realised how embarrassed we feel about the Champions League campaign. He must do, because it wasn't good enough. Look, obviously I'll stick with you on this one, Andy. Gio states that on the 1st of February, he wants a better squad. I think we are all in agreement as Rangers supporters that he is here until the 1st of February at least. Would you be giving him money? Do you think there's money there? And what do you think he'll do if he gets money? Or where would you like to see the squad strengthened if he has money?
Well, that's a long one. That's 3 long questions in a row there.
Yeah,
thanks for that. Appreciate that. Firstly, I think you're right. He is going to be there until then. Would I give him money? Yes, you have to. Right now, I wouldn't say being 9 points behind is completely fatal for Rangers this season. Certainly not looking good, such as the consistency from across the city. But you've got to believe, with only 15, 16 games played, it can't be fatal. It could be turned around. So in order to do that, you're going to have to spend money in January. It's as simple as that. If he's going to be here, yes, he's going to have to get money to spend. A different question is, should he be here? In my opinion, no. It's just somebody else should be brought in and them given money in January, giving them from them till May to build a team to combat next year. It's as simple as that for me. That's not going to happen. Is there money there? Yes, there will be money there. Yep. How much we don't know. I must admit I'd have liked to have seen contract for Kent and Morelos just so we get some money in for them, because they're going to go anyway and they should go. But I'd like to see some money back for them, so that would have been something, but that's not happened either. So who's failed in that respect? Yeah. So yes, there is money there. Where would I like it spent? Oh God, how many centre halves are you allowed to buy? Because we just seem to lose centre halves. They sign for us, then disappear. It's as simple as that. Last year it was strikers in the run to Seville. We didn't have a striker. Aribo was playing up top himself, and they tried Sakala away and Red Star Belgrade up top himself. There was so many things that went wrong up front last year. It now seems to be centre half. I think goalkeeper. We need a goalkeeper. There's loads of places you could spend the money on. There is money there. Would I give it to Gio? Yes, because you have to. But I'd rather wouldn't. I'd rather give it to a new manager as we speak.
Yeah. And seeing as JB's still not here, you've got the pleasure of talking about Rangers some more, I suppose, and that is the first year in. I'm keen to kind of wrap up this interview chat. The first year in charge, would you consider it a success or not a success, given that we had a run to a European Cup final, a Europa League final, a Scottish Cup, but I do take the point in that there was a 6-point lead that Gio inherited when he came into the squad, and that was squandered. And it is November, and we are 9 points behind in the league. Success, yes or no?
No, absolutely not. Losing a 6-point lead to Celtic from when Gerrard left. Never won the Europa League. Lost the Europa League. Talk all you want about the run. It was fantastic. We'll all remember it. Didn't win it. Won the Scottish Cup against a poor Hearts side. And it's only November before a World Cup, albeit it's a weird season. It's only November, we're 9 points behind, and it looks like a very, very hard uphill struggle. That's not a success. One Scottish Cup, with all the negatives, nowhere near a success. Not anywhere near enough of a success for a Rangers manager. No.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. It's just not been good enough. Look, the next part of the pod we'll come on to. Really keen to get your thoughts and opinions and what Rangers should be doing up until the 15th of December, which is our first game back against Hibs. That always proves to be an interesting game. Thoughts on the players getting 2 weeks off, Andy? What do you think about that, given that teams like Aberdeen are using this sort of World Cup break? They're away over to Atlanta, I think it is, over in the States. They've obviously got a partnership over there. And obviously we've seen pictures of Morelos doing his best Georgie LaForge impression. There's an obscure one for all the Trekkies out there. But yeah, what's your thoughts on the players getting 2 weeks off?
I'm torn, in all honesty, Kyle. I'm torn. You can see, I believe, from performances on the pitch that morale seems to be quite low. Fitness seems to be quite low. So, in essence, we're all human beings. They have to get some downtime. I can understand that fully. If morale is low, go away. It's a 5-week break. Go away for a fortnight. Have some time with your families. Come back, recharge your batteries, and train solid for 3 weeks before the game. Now, I can understand that, but I don't agree with it. I think just being Rangers through and through, we're playing so poorly. I would like to see some sort of training camp for 5 weeks. Now, I'm not saying you have to train intensively for 5 weeks, but there certainly can be some come and go. It could be group training. It could be somewhere away hot weather training. It could be something like that. Aberdeen are doing something like that, and watch the World Cup together. A bit more team bonding, things like that. You shouldn't be training solid for 5 weeks as in a pre-season way, especially this only a few weeks into the season, a few months into the season. But I can understand why they're away on holiday. What I will say is, if you are lucky enough to be playing poorly for Glasgow Rangers and get 2 weeks off to go home and onto a beach, don't put it on Instagram. It does not look good. If you've been in Glasgow long enough, which Alfredo Morelos has, he's going to have to know how that's going to go down, like a lead balloon. I don't want to see him doing that. I'm not saying I want him to be down in the dumps and moping about the way we are, or we can be after Rangers play so poorly, but you certainly don't want to see him all over Instagram having a whale of a time. I don't agree with that at all. I think he's got to read the room a wee bit better, and I'd like to think he's maybe been told that now. The rest of the players seem to have anyway. So no, I can see the point of having some downtime. I don't agree with it. I'd like to see some sort of 5-week training camp with a mixture of intensive and easygoing training, and come back a wee bit more refreshed and a good bit more fit.
Yeah, I think that's a couple of key points you've touched on there. I know that's been a discussion that I've certainly had on the Wednesday bulletin. Is just that I don't think we look as fit as what we have done. There's no getting away from it. I think the fact that the number of injuries that we've got as well backs that up. There's so many injuries, like just unnecessary injuries, I feel, that's happening. And yeah, the optics on it are terrible. I know I sometimes hate that phrase, the optics on it look really bad or whatever, but just if you're going away on holiday, don't be punting it out to the rest of the world that you're away. It doesn't look right, especially a guy he's been criticised, and rightly criticised, for looking unfit, a bit out of shape. I think it's fair to say. What I would say is I would be hoping that the players would be using this 2 weeks, even if off their own backs, to go and get fitter. Do you know what I mean? I mean, Hagi is somebody we'll come on to at the moment, but it seems he's been all over the shop in his interview in RTV, getting fitter, and I would expect professionals to be doing the same, but it's not good enough, and it sort of reeks of the mediocrity that's running right through the club at the moment, from top to bottom, and I think this is just another example of it. But again, we don't know. If I'm assuming that the club is competent enough to say to Alfie, like, don't be putting that on social media. But then again, Alfie's totally the type of guy that I think maybe wouldn't listen to. Yeah, exactly. Maybe wouldn't listen to them. So yeah, who knows?
What I will say, Kyle, is the fitness. You're right. I think we are unfit, but the professional football players, it's not like me going on my January diet. It's not going to take 6 months. If they've got 5 weeks free, they're pro football players. Their fitness is lacking at the moment. It's not going to take much to get that back. 5 weeks should be ample enough to get some sort of fitness back, or certainly fitter than they are at present. It's not going to take months and weeks for them to do that. 5 weeks could be enough to do it. So it is disappointing in that respect, to see it not happening in front of our eyes. But I mean, if it didn't put it on Instagram, we wouldn't have known. I think we all knew they were getting 2 weeks off. That was said. I think Van Bronckhorst said that they were getting 2 weeks off and 3 weeks of training. So we did know that, but we never knew they were away jollying it up on beaches. But as I say, it wouldn't take much for them to come back a hell of a lot fitter than they look right now.
Yeah, I think that's a fair comment from Billy Wilson there. That's certainly the way I feel about it, and the way that a lot of other people. I totally take the point that like they're human beings at the end of the day, and that you're allowed a break, but just don't rub it in our faces when you've been poor this season. That's all I would ask. Just have a wee thought about that. Look, the next comment or the next chat here that I'd like to discuss in the pod is Mr. Souness, the magnificent Mr. Souness, came out. Could sometimes be a wee bit controversial with the stuff he says. I've seen him doing the rounds. He's in a few papers, and he was certainly on the BBC today, I'm sure. He says that there are 3 Old Firm games left, 2 at Ibrox. Rangers just have to win all 3 and win all their games to the rest of the season. And he doesn't really. I got the impression that he didn't really see it to be a big deal, to be honest with you. What do you think about what Souness has said, and do you think that he's perhaps oversimplified it a bit too much, or is it as simple as that? Is that the mentality that the players need to get in their heads?
I think that is oversimplification. I mean, what he said there's true of the 29th of July. Win all your games and you win the league. It's what's happened since then till now. What gives them that impression that can happen? Because I certainly don't have it. JB spoke before he went away there that if we come back, is it Hibs, Aberdeen, Celtic? Is that our run?
Yes, I believe so.
Say we go out and we beat Hibs 3-0 at Ibrox, Aberdeen, we beat them 3-0 and say we scrape a 1-0 against Celtic. Are you still confident going away to Ross County or away to Tynecastle? I wouldn't be. Because you know there's going to be a draw or a defeat round the corner. There's such as the manner of the manager and the squad, and certainly the starting 11 now. So I don't think it is anywhere near as simple as that. As I said back when we were talking about on this day, 2004, that back then you could win 3 Old Firm games in a row, and the other team from across the city would drop points here, and you could maybe draw in Dundee and things like that. All these things did happen. It's different now. I don't see Celtic dropping many points. They've certainly looked a lot closer to dropping points before the break kicked in there. But in your heart of hearts, whenever Celtic are drawing a game, you know they're going to find a winner. That's the difference. We don't seem to be able to find that winner. Livingston at home, 1-0 down, we get one back late on. Still didn't feel as if we were going to win it 2-1. Same when St Mirren scored against us last Sunday or Saturday. I didn't think we were going to charge on and win that game 2 or 3-1. Celtic would have. So I don't think it's quite as easy as just saying win the next 3 Old Firm games and win the rest of your games. Technically, that's factually accurate.
Yeah.
It's not going to happen in the way I see it under this manager and this team stroke squad. I don't see that happening at all. I don't like to criticise Graham Souness. Love Graham Souness. I would like to see him actually say the quotes. I've only read it. I don't know if that's exactly what came out of his mouth. If it is, then I think he knows himself that's oversimplified. 2022, Glasgow, Scottish football, it's not as easy as that.
Yeah, I totally agree, and it was really interesting. The way something that I took from that interview was I think, I don't know if it was me. I know he's a player and a manager, Souness, but I don't know if it was certainly. I felt he was sticking up for Gio a fair bit, and he seemed to be sort of largely laying the blame on some of the players. There was a wee quote here which I thought was quite interesting. He just said the players need to be big. You have to stand up, be counted, stick together, and play your way out of it. And I think he's got a point in that we're not really doing that. The team doesn't seem to have gelled, doesn't seem cohesive. But I totally agree with you, Andy. It sounds very simple on paper. Maybe that's his management style. Just don't overcomplicate it. But yeah, to me, it's just not the reality of it.
The players do have to be bigger. They do have to stand up and be counted, Kyle. But that's not my job or your job or Graham Souness' job. That's Gio's job. It's Gio's job to make them go and do that. And that's where the failure lies at the moment.
Yeah, totally agree. And look, there's a couple of. I was going to talk about Hagi in this next part before we go on to the star of the show and Ross Wilson here. But look, Hagi, he said he was back in training. I noticed there wasn't a definitive return date in the article or in the interview, but he said he was close to a final destination. All the noises from the interview on RTV say look like he's been well looked after. He's had all the right care. It was really encouraging to see stuff, especially with ACL injuries, that the team in charge of him aren't pushing him too hard. to return back. I mean, because I didn't realise it was 9.5 months. I did not think it was that long in my head. But is this a guy that you're looking forward to coming back into the squad? Do you think he'll make a big difference, or do you think he's one of these guys that had a bit of the Nico Katic about him, that we all had him much better than what he was because he was absent for so long?
Partly, I think that might be the case. Although at present, I do think he would add value to the team. I think he can play off the right, and we definitely need something like that. So often, you're right. You're exactly right, Kel. So often when people are absent, especially for a lengthy period of time, people they can't wait till they're back because something's going wrong, and they become world beaters. Now, Hagi's not a world beater, but he's certainly a better player than what we've been playing at now, and he can certainly do a job for us. Rangers are very poor at the moment at telling us when players are going to be back. Every player that seemed to go down on Ibrox turf was going to be back after the World Cup. Now, that's not going to be the case. I mean, Tom Lawrence, I think they're now talking it's going to be after Christmas and New Year. And I think he's far more important than Hagi coming back. I really, really believe that. And we've only seen, 6-7 games of Tom Lawrence, perhaps, maybe 8 games. I still believe he's going to add more value to the team than Hagi will. Although I do want to see Hagi back. I don't buy into he's going to be a world beater, because he won't be. He's in a very, very hard, long absence. So it's going to take him some time. In essence, we'll all want him to come into the team and hit the ground running. It won't happen like that. Fingers are going to be crossed all over the place that he doesn't have a knock in the first few games and knock him back a wee bit, because that's the Rangers' way. I'm quite sure if he takes a wee knock in January, he'll be back just after the European Championships in a couple of years' time, because that seems to be our kind of benchmark, which is very annoying. So yes, I want him back. Yes, he will add some value. No, he's not going to change things drastically. Tom Lawrence will, I believe. Yeah,
that's really interesting you say that. It's there was a discussion on Twitter that I saw between a few sort of Rangers supporters, and they were talking in particular about Hagi's bravery and saying that's something that we've kind of missed from the team. Like, Hagi's one of these guys, like he can take a challenge. Like, he's been fair booted up and down parks all over Scotland, to be honest with you, and I don't know if that's something that we've maybe missed a wee bit on the right wing at times, because I'm assuming that's where he would go into the team. I'm assuming Hagi, when he comes back fit, that he would slot in that right side. But do you think that's something that we're missing, especially when I look at guys like Matondo, Scott Wright, Fashion Cala maybe to an extent, but do you think that we're missing a bit of that bravery at the minute, that willingness to sort of put your head or your foot in where you're going to get hurt from it?
Yes, definitely. But all these things are overemphasised when you're not playing well anywhere else as well, Hagi does bring you that. I mean, I can't remember who I was talking to in the pod, maybe Scott, Dave, it's irrelevant. On the way to, before Hagi's injury, he was pivotal in certain games, both either creating or scoring chances. So he can definitely bring that again. He came back after the summer, and it was as if he'd grown outwards. He became an adult. He went from a boy to a man, and that was massive. And he became braver, is probably the word. Braver and stronger is probably the word, and gave us more options. So that I've no reason to believe that's not going to be the case when he comes back. It's just when he's going to be back, and is the damage going to be done for this season? Sadly, I think it will be. So yes, there is definitely need for somebody harder, somebody braver. And I think Hagi will offer a wee bit more than Fashion Sakala or Scott Wright in that respect. But he's not going to make it pivotal, if you know what I mean. Because he's going to be a bit braver in that position if he makes it his own. I don't think it's going to be massively pivotal to the way we play.
Yeah, and just something to go back on. I'm really interested to see what is it that Hagi saying that you're looking forward to Tom Lawrence coming back more than Hagi, given that you've only seen. Well, we've only seen Lawrence playing it in a handful of games. Is it his application? Is it his attitude? Is it just that he seems to be, I don't know, he's suited to British football? What is it? I'm dead interested to hear.
Perhaps a mixture of all three, and it might even just be the fact there was more of a feel-good factor before he got injured. We were winning, we were beating teams 4 and 5 at Ibrox. He was pivotal in their games. So perhaps there's a kind of mixture of all of them. And again, I might be very guilty of saying what a lot of folk are doing with Hagi. He might come back and not be as pivotal as I'm only putting him there because he's injured. But just the way he played, watching him a few times at Ibrox, he was pivotal in creating chances. He was brave. I thought he was very brave. He's hard. He'll put his foot in. He'll make a challenge. He'll get the crowd going. He'll get the team going. I just think from what we've got at present to pick from, I think he's going to make a massive difference.
Yeah, and there was a couple of comments coming in here from Angus Loudrup Morrison. I wonder if that is his middle name. Ianis Hagi is a great player and we've missed his creativity. And RFC 56 says Hagi as the right wing for Rangers' future. I'm not convinced. To be honest with you, RFC 56, neither am I, but I am struggling to who else we put on that right wing at the minute, because I said if Gio is given funds or whatever, I think we need to look at a right winger. But then again, we did have funds and the money got spent on Rabbi Matondo, and that doesn't seem to have worked out too well. But that's something we'll come on to in a wee second. So, yeah, look, the question was, has Ross Wilson been a success at Rangers? There's quite a few comments coming in at the start of the show. I think the overall feeling was no. But look, I'm just going to get into it, Andy. I'm just going to go through a list of players that have been brought in since Ross Wilson's come into the club, and you can tell me if you think they've been a success or not a success. I realise some of the guys that have been signed in the summer just there, it might be a bit harsh, but I said
Glasgow. It's Glasgow.
Yeah, that's it. It's sink or swim into it in this goldfish bowl. So, I'll be honest, there's a few that I've written down that I'm not sure about. So I'll give you you can say on the fence about it still. Yeah, and on the fence about it, that's what we'll go with. So number one, first player he brought in, Ianis Hagi, success or not a success?
Yeah, yes.
Canberry?
No.
Bassey?
Yes.
McLaughlin?
No.
Defoe?
Yes.
Balogun?
Yes.
Roof?
Yes.
Itten?
No.
I'm just going to give you these in a 3. Zungu Simpson, right?
No.
Offabor, I think it'll be harsh to comment on him.
Yeah.
Sakala?
Yes.
Lundstrom?
Yes.
Bakuna?
No.
Sands?
I'll pass on him.
Diallo?
No.
And Zakowski and Ramsey as well.
No.
Suter?
No.
Yeah. I'm going to assume you're a yes for Tom Lawrence and a yes for Antonio Cholak as well, yeah. Rabbi Matondo?
No. No.
Yilmaz?
Need to see him first.
And Ben Davies?
No.
Right, so I'll tell you something. You've been a lot more positive in the successes than what I've said, because I think I had about 5. I think I've had Hagi, Bassey, Defoe, Balogun, and Lawrence and Cholak has maybe been the only successful ones. The rest I was kind of no. I think they are quite obvious or on the fence.
I think that's quite similar to me, right enough. I had Roof in there for the sheer fact how pivotal he was getting to 55. He was very pivotal that season. That's the only reason I said yes for Roof. On the whole, if you had no for Roof, I can totally understand why, because since then he's done really nothing, injury-wise as well. So perhaps I was a bit hasty with that and thinking back fondly of 55 there, but I do see where you're coming from.
Yeah, it's a difficult one. So would you say that on the whole that Ross Wilson's time has been a success?
No, I don't think so. Before we came onto the pod, when I was waiting on you signing in, Kyle, I was looking at the WhatsApp chat, and it seems quite interesting. There's a few folks arguing about how you should approach signings and things like that as a football club like Rangers. I'm old school. I think it was Scott who will be old school as well. He's over 50, isn't he? So he will be old school as well. I think it should be up to the manager. I don't believe directors of football, okay, there's a place for them, there's a time for them, things like that. I don't believe that should happen as much. I think a manager should be going and looking at players and getting the system he wants and things like that. I don't believe, I'll put it this way, I believe directors of football are getting too much credence. I don't believe that should be the case.
Yeah, there's an interesting comment coming in here or earlier on that I starred, and it was from RSC72. He says he had a squad full of assets a season ago, and right now we've none. I find it really hard to disagree with that. I'm not really sure who you would. I mean, because I know it's constantly talked about on this pod. It's constantly talked about at Rangers, and it's the the player trading model, and it's that I hate that cliched phrase over and over again. But the whole point is that once you release one lot, that you've just got another load ready to come through. I don't know if the thinking was that Yilmaz and guys like that were perhaps meant to be the next sort of generation come through. But do you think that is I think that's a fairly valid comment, saying that we had a squad full of assets and now we've got nobody?
100%. If you say 18 months ago, if you were to try and buy Glenn Kamara, Morelos and Ryan Kent, how much would you be spending? And how much are they going to go for? Look at it that way. It's frightening. You're talking into the tens of millions for the three. And we're going to get nothing for them anymore. So that's true. But whose fault's that? Is that Van Bronckhorst's fault for the way we're playing, for poor form? Or is it Ross Wilson's fault? That's the thing. They kind of go hand in hand, I believe. I don't think you can put that down to just one of them. I think the manager's there to set the team up to win games. And when you get to European stages, albeit that was only maybe 8 months ago, your players in the shop window there and they're performing well. Fast forward 4 or 5 months to what's just happened in the 6 Champions League games and domestically, and the values dropped drastically. So that's got to be down to the manager. That's down to form. So that's not down to Ross Wilson, but I totally understand his point.
Mm-hmm. And this is just a wee quick aside. Andy, I don't know if you can see that. Cubby Cubster said, based on your answer, why did the club and Gio get rid of Balogun?
I don't know. I think he brought in Suter and Davies. Is it because it's because everybody's injured now? Are you thinking back more fondly of Balogun? I don't think so. I did rate him. I rated him for the time he played right back against Celtic and we won. I thought that was fantastic. I thought he was a massive asset, Balogun. So I'm in agreement with whoever said that comment. I'm in total agreement with that. But are we looking back fondly because they're all injured? Perhaps. If we had them all fit, would he be playing? Would it be Golson and Suter? Would it be Golson and Davies? We don't know. But it is a bit of a weird one when you think back.
Yeah, and another comment here, which is my sort of next part of the discussion on Ross Wilson, said near 30 signings, the only one sold for profit was one Beale and Gerrard told him to sign from seeing him in England and organised a friendly against their B time to show what it was all about. I'm assuming that's talking about Calvin Bassey there.
Yes.
In terms of that, was that the behind closed door game? The infamous, who was it? Lafferty, was it Eros Grezda and Borna Barisic basically got told that they didn't have a future at Rangers.
That's right.
Oh, that's interesting. I never realised that Bassey played in that game. Yeah, so I mean, I'm looking at it here. I think that is a very, very valid point, because as much as people look at the players that Ross Wilson's brought in and they harks on about the player trading model, player trading isn't only what you bring in, it's what you put out as well. I was having a look at some of the players that he's kind of let go in his time. Bassey, there was a profit made of him. Aribo, Patterson, but I suppose he wasn't bought in. Acuna and Edinson, and that's it. That's the only money that we've made on players. There was a whole heap of guys like Kelly and stuff like that you would maybe expect us to go on for a small fee. Simpson as well. Do you think that is a valid criticism that we haven't made money on, or as much money as what we should be, and players that are letting go, or do you think as well that the two that I could off the top of my head are Morelos, when he had a kind of peak value a couple of years ago, when there was that sort of, I don't know if it was true, but there's rumours about 20 million bid, and then Kamara, another one this season, who's been just terrible in my opinion. I think there was a rumoured bid of about 11-12 million pounds from Nice. Do you think that's a failure on Ross Wilson's part in not capitalising and picking the correct time to let these guys go?
Yeah, you'll not be surprised to hear this from me, but yes and no. Yes, I can understand. Yeah, you should be selling them on for profit. That's got to be, as you say, the player trading model now. You buy young, you put them in the shop window in Europe, they play well under the manager, and they go for profit. It's as simple as that. But it sounds as simple as that. But again, that's down to form. That can only happen when the form's good enough, and the form hasn't been good enough. You've said it yourself. We've hardly seen Glenn Kamara this year, and when we have, he's been poor. So you're not going to get somebody offering 12 million for Glenn Kamara. You're not going to get 20 million for Morelos. He's out of contract. It's not been signed. So there's failures all over the place, and that stems from Ross Wilson and Gio. We've got to be. We can't be signing 29-year-olds from England, 30-year-olds from England now. We need to be signing Calvin Bassies. We need to look for the next best thing. And Beale and Gerrard seen that in Calvin Bassey, and it worked out to be absolutely correct. We need more than just one, albeit that was phenomenal, the profit on him. But I forget the chap's name now, but the chap done the podcast with Tommy, the financial guy.
Liar.
Yeah, it does not sound, the profit isn't as basic as we're all made to believe. You don't get a big check like you win the lottery for 20 million or whatever it is. You get that in installments and you get it in various other ways. So we have to remember that, and we have to sign players who are going to be 3 or 4 years' time after they've been in the shop window, move on for massive profit. That's his job. But he can only get the players in on the deal that he thinks is fit for Rangers. It's up to the manager to put that guy in the shop window. And Van Bronckhorst's not going to do that with anybody at the moment.
Yeah, that's that as well. I mean, it's just when you're, as you said, you're in the shop window with getting to European finals and stuff like that. It's the time to capitalise. I know hindsight's a wonderful thing, but it certainly looks like we should have recycled guys like Morelos and Kamara in particular, especially now that Cholak seems to be firing on all cylinders. I mean, that's not to say that I wouldn't bring in another striker as well, but yeah. So look, we're nearing the sort of end of the podcast. Thanks everybody for getting involved, and I think the sort of overwhelming feeling is that largely Ross Wilson has been not a failure, not successful at Rangers with largely the business that he's done. I think that he needs to have capitalised a wee bit more and letting assets go. And I think there is some question marks over the success of some of the signings that he's brought in. But look, I'm going to never discussed this, Andy, but I'm going to chuck it out to you, all right, seeing as that we've got a wee couple of minutes here because JB bailed early on us. But you are in the manager's shoes. Ross Wilson's come to you and said, look, what do you think that we need to strengthen in January? And just for argument's sake, just say that I don't want to say there's no restriction on the budget, but like what signings would you bring in, or what positions would you bring in?
Goalkeeper. Depending on the length of Goldson's injury, because we don't know that yet, do we? We've not been told how long he's out for. Is he another World Cup one? We don't know.
No idea.
I would think of a centre half. You're going to have to replace Davis, Arfield, Jack and Kamara at some point. So you're going to have to try and get some midfielders. Is that going to be, is Tillman going to be one of them? We don't know. Should he be? Probably not, in my opinion, at the moment. We need a left winger because Kent's going, or do we try Matondo out there? Let's wait and see. We need a right winger, and if Morelos goes and Roof stays injured, we need a striker. So just the 11 we're needing, Kyle, in January. But that's, I must admit, this probably sound very negative, and I'm so negative at the moment. I can't. JB said at the start before he left there that he's going to try and be positive. I literally can't find anything to be positive about. With Rangers at the moment, beating Hearts 1-0. I just still didn't believe that we were going to go and romp in Paisley. And sadly, that's where we are at the moment. I just can't find any get up and go for Rangers at the moment. And I can't be alone. I know I'm not alone in that. But if I was in the manager's shoes with a blank checkbook, it was frightening. It's frightening. There've been not a lot of players left there, and there've been a lot of new ones in.
Yeah, I totally agree with you there. And one final thing before we go, I know that our group chat, and I seen a few people mention it at the start of the show as well. Kenny McLean no relation, by the way, but a guy that's been linked with us quite a few times in the past. Is he somebody? I think he's now in his, is he 30, 31? Is he somebody that you would be happy to have at Rangers, given that we seem to have a bit of an issue in central midfield at the moment? And I hate saying this, and you know I hate saying this, but I'm looking at guys like Stephen Davis here. Would you see him as a replacement for a Stephen Davis
in January?
Yes, maybe.
Possibly. But I don't think that's the road we should be going down. Signing 30 or 31-year-old centre midfielders is not planning for the future, in my opinion. It's got to be Calvin Bassey-esque, and I'm not saying you've got to sign them for X amount and sell them for hundreds of millions or anything like that. It's got to be sign them young and put them in the shop window. I think the days of signing 29, 30, 31-year-old centre midfield players is gone. It doesn't work. We have to replace what we've got there, which is old, with young talent. Would I be happy with it? In January, possibly depending on the length of the contract, but it's not the model. It's not the road I would like to go down. Yeah,
I totally agree with you on that one. But look, guys, I think that's about it for today. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for sticking with us for so long. I can't believe we've made a whole podcast and not even mentioned the bloody World Cup one Sunday. So there you go.
Well, I watched 15 minutes of it earlier on. Qatar didn't look too good. Ecuador looked excellent. I will get into it. I'm quite sure. I've said for the last month. I'm not really that bored about it because it doesn't feel, it's not summer, it's coming up to Christmas and blah, 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 all the rest of the narrative. But as the games go on, I'm quite sure I will find myself on the couch watching a few of the games. I can't deny it. As for who's going to win it, if you're going to ask me, I'm going to go with the Argies.
Oh, that's an interesting one. I think I'll pick France just because they're red, white, and blue. There you go. Look. Thanks to everybody for watching. I said it's been great. You've obviously, I think you guys that are watching and viewing have seen that we're on a new platform and we've got new branding and that, and it's really good. This is all to interact more with you guys. Just remember, just give us a wee like and subscribe. And just to let you know what the kind of schedule is going forward for this World Cup break, we'll be doing a live pod on a Wednesday at 7, and we'll be doing the regular sort of main pod on a Sunday at 8 o'clock as well. So listen, thanks very much for joining us, guys, and have a good evening, everybody.